Hello again, I'm Henry T. Welcome to the Henry T. Show. We've had some powerful guests on here lately, and today, wow, what else do we expect? Another powerful guest. And this guy literally carries a lot of power. He's a longtime New Mexico resident. He's the athletic director at New Mexico State, former great baseball player on campus. Good guy. Everybody says, now that's a dedicated man. Look how he loves his school. Look at the sacrifices he makes, his heady decisions. He's the total package you want in that kind of leadership capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our honor. What a pleasure to be able to talk with this man. You talk about a mover and a shaker and a guy that loves his school. He loves his Aggies. Man, this guy's powerful. And we love him as a friend. Down in Las Cruces, everybody puts their arms around this man because he's literally changed athletics there on that campus. And a couple of years ago when the Aggies went to a bowl game, this guy worked and rounded up 25,000 fans to go to their first bowl game since the cow jumped over the moon. 25,000 Aggie fans were rounded up by this man. And Mario Moccia is a hero in Las Cruces, and the Aggie Nation fans all over the world, literally. We say hello and Happy New Year to our close friend, Mario Moccia. Mario, good morning. How are you, buddy?
Well, Henry, I don't know. I'm going to have to get a bigger hat size after that introduction. That was pretty over the top, but I really appreciate it. I think fans know that we have probably a 30-year association when I was working with the guys up north as an intern in the early 90s. But happy to be on, and always happy to talk about New Mexico State athletics.
Amen. And you really there's a foundation that I really was alluding to in that introduction, because today when conferences are thinking, hey, let's build, let's add this team, let's subtract that team, I've always been curious, and I never have received the right answer, heart-to-heart answer, of why your school, New Mexico State, is not presently in the Mountain West Conference. And I won't accept anything but a yes. So convince me that these people are making the right decision. In my heart, a lifetime resident of New Mexico, a big fan of the Aggies for years. Why aren't your Aggies, your sports teams, in the Mountain West right now? Give me a convincing answer.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Henry, and if you polled 10 Aggie fans, 9 of them at least would want to be in the Mountain West. It's schools that they're very familiar with, that we've competed against over the years. Obviously, our in-state and biggest rival, New Mexico, is in that conference. So, I think the reality is a few things. When there's conference realignment, I think oftentimes they look at football as the primary driver. And for a long time, we did not have the football success or the infrastructure that I think people needed. I think second, they look at geography and TV markets. I know some people now, obviously San Jose State won the Mountain West Conference this year, so they had a heck of a season. But prior to that, I think a lot of people were wondering, hey, what does San Jose State bring? Well, they bring maybe a top 10 media market in the country. And Las Cruces, while we kind of fall under that El Paso, DBA, we've got all the 3 TV stations. I think the marketplace, the media is one other thing. And then geography, now I'm making the argument why would you not invite New Mexico State? I think when you fly into Albuquerque, heck, all the facilities are, a stone's throw Now, those are the only three things I can think of. But there's a lot of places that aren't very close to the airport, that maybe don't have the biggest media market. You know, my good friend Tom, the AD, doesn't hear that. But, you know, we are very competitive. It would be a great travel partner with New Mexico. So I think maybe look at us as not the best fit that they could get. But I will tell you this, two things. Number one, we're really happy to be in the Western Athletic Conference. You know, they've been very good to us, and I think we've been good to them. But I will tell you the story. You know, when we were playing Utah State in the Arizona Bowl in December 29th of 2017, Craig Thompson, the commissioner, and I just happened to be on the visiting team sideline. So in between the first quarter break, both conference commissioners, the Sun Belt and the Mountain West, both ADs and both presidents, were going to do a presentation, and we were lined up on the Utah State side, and we were looking at that expansive 25,000 folks that you just mentioned. And he looked and said, "Hey, that is one heck of a job that New Mexico State did." So, you know, things like that count when commissioners and athletic directors and presidents are talking about additions. You know, if we can prove that, hey, when we go to a bowl game, we can bring that kind of fan base. I mean, that's the value added stuff that they're looking for. So, you know, I'm glad at least our performance was against a Mountain West Conference team in front of the commissioner. But you know, we'll see what happens in the future. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of movement in the next few years.
Well, you mentioned Laramie. Okay, we know that in size of the town, I don't know, maybe you're bigger than Laramie, Las Cruces, or maybe the same size, but wow, that's impressive, 25,000 fans. I think of a community like Lincoln, Nebraska. You're comparable in size, I think, but look at them. Look at the big conference they represent. So you can't convince me, because I know the potential of your town. If you were like today, introduce the newest member of the Mountain West Conference, your fans would rise to the occasion. They would say, "Wow, man, they're over there pounding their chest, say, we're big time now. Let's go see the games, because there's going to be some big name teams in here now." Would your fans rise to that occasion?
Well, I think we've seen it, you know, whenever we play a Mountain West Conference opponent, you know, there's a little uptick, certainly in the attendance. We played Wyoming in football a couple years ago. We kicked it off on ESPN2. You know, in basketball, we've played Colorado State. We actually did a 2-for-1, 2 times up there, 1 time here. We've played Air Force. So we had, and obviously our longstanding series with New Mexico. So, you know, we have played Mountain West Conference opponents, and certainly there is an increased fan experience. I think many of our fans still pine for the days of UNLV, you know, basketball, etc. So I do think that whenever we can get those games, it's a good thing. And if you look at our football schedule, we've got Fresno State on there. In future years, we've got San Jose State, we've got Hawaii, obviously New Mexico, San Diego State. So we've got a pretty heavy Mountain West Conference opponents coming up on our football schedule.
Well, what can we do? What can your Aggie base, what can Aggie Nation do to become a strong catalyst to get you in front of Commissioner Thompson and say, here we are, what's wrong with us? Do we need to put lipstick on? What do we need to do here, Commissioner?
Well, you know, I think any school in the country is trying to improve their overall athletic footprint, you know, whether that's success on the field, the academics of the student athletes. And by doing that, I think that will put you in contention when there are openings. And then it's up to the school to say, hey, this would be the best thing for us. So I do think that, our budgets need to increase. There are some facilities we definitely need to upgrade, like our football press box. So I think there are some things, but also our season ticket base. We've got a pretty hardy one in basketball. I'd love to improve our season ticket base in football. We already got some infrastructure with our, TV contracts, et cetera. We have Fox Sports Arizona. So I think we've got, good exposure. We just need some additional infrastructure upgrades.
Yeah. So you're telling all of us today the possibility still exists. You're still in the conversation. Please give us at least that today.
Well, I'd say this, I think when conferences like a Mountain West or a Conference USA go through expansion, or, if a Boise State were to leave or what have you, I think it's our job to put us in the best position to be attractive, for that conference. And if that's something we say, hey, this makes sense for us, then we've done our job. But once again, we've put we've got a lot of equity in the Western Athletic Conference. I do know, and I hear from our fans that they certainly wish we had the UNLVs and the this and the that on the schedule. So I certainly know where our fans' hearts lie, and it's up to us to put us in the best position when opportunities arise.
All right. So somewhere I get a yes out of that.
It's still the political season, Henry.
Yeah. Speaking about the political season, I would hope that our governor would say, let's give our New Mexico teams a break. Let's give them a couple of home games and test out the situation. How dangerous is it literally out there? Other schools around the country get to play at home. Governor, can the Aggies and the Lobos play a couple of games at home? Is that still a possibility? Because I can feel the stress and the strain from way outside. Like me, I'm way out here in no man's land watching other teams play home games. Why can't we test the medical market, if you will?
Sure. Well, obviously this affects New Mexico State and UNM, and I can't speak for Eddie, but one of the things, obviously, when the gating criteria changes or the number of cases, reach the point where, you've got the yellow, the green, the yellow, and the red system right now, the counties are still in the red. So you can only practice 5 people without any contact. That makes the vast majority of sports impossible to even practice in New Mexico. I will tell you this, one thing I would take, sir, we would love to play home games. That would be great. It would take a lot of pressure off the student athletes, the coaches, etc., even if we didn't have any fans. But what I would love to have is the ability just to practice in the Pan American Center and at Presley Askew Field with baseball and softball stadium and the soccer stadium. We can play on the road for this year. And I think what we're looking for is what I would label the New Mexico United exemption. They were able to practice at home and they played on the road. We are testing what the NCAA mandates in men's and women's basketball. That's 3 PCR tests a week. And we get those results in less than 24 hours. We've got a lab right here on campus. We have all the mechanisms for contact tracing. If somebody does, test positive. So, it's my belief that our teams are not the cause of potential spread of COVID-19 in the community, because we have such a, we have them wrapped up pretty good. And the testing is very specific. It's a mandate from the NCAA. So that's always been my request is, can our teams practice in Las Cruces? And then, we'll play every game on the road this year if we have to. So, that was my Christmas wish list. That was my New Year's wish. So now we're into what, January the 6th. So hopefully maybe we can get that before too long.
And I respect the way that you treat our governor with respect. Your rapport is invaluable. You have to get along. But I imagine behind closed doors, you're biting your lip and you got an adjective there and you're a gentleman. You got to save it and put it back in the drawer because you need to always have that rapport with the governor and the senators, whoever's going to drive that point home for you. But I'm going to seek you out again for your optimism. Do you see in the very near future that you will be able to practice at home at least?
Yeah, and gee whiz, Henry, that's going to take the crystal ball. You know, I would like to think that, it's one of two things. Either the cases will go down enough so the counties can go green, or the gating criteria could change. I'll give you a good example. Right now, California has a lot of restrictions from a state standpoint, but the governor has exempted college and professional athletics from that. So you see these California teams are still practicing and competing at home. They might not, I don't think there's many or any fans there, but at least the governor said, hey, we're going to offer you an exemption, I assume because of their testing capability, their contact tracing ability, et cetera. Now, what's unique is that the county that San Jose is in supersedes the will of the state. So that county, and I don't know that what's called off the top of my head, that's why San Jose State men and women are in Arizona at the same hotel that we are in, because they can't practice and compete in their county. They'd have to go outside, and then when they come back, they'd have to quarantine. So it's very unique that the county of California is superseding the state, while in the state of New Mexico, it's not like Doña Ana County or the mayor could say, hey, governor, we hear what you say, but this is what we're going to do anyway. It just doesn't work like that. So, let's hope that cases will go down, or the gating criteria will change, or we can get an exemption, or we can at least practice in Las Cruces.
How expensive is it to have you in this situation? The team and living and playing their games elsewhere. Is it testing your budget right now?
Well, obviously, because it's something we did not budget for. So we said, hey, for the men and the women, we wanted to launch a fundraising campaign. We kind of pegged the expenses for the men to be in Phoenix. And remember, the women were more road warriors. They played UTEP, then they came back and quarantined. Then they went to Texas and played UTEP again, quarantined. Then they went to California for a road swing, and then right from there to Colorado for a road swing, back home to quarantine, and now they're out in Phoenix. So we pegged those expenses would be around $100,000, the hotels, the meals, to the end of the year. So we launched a campaign called donate4state.com, donate the number 4state.com. And so far we have raised, I want to say over $93,000 towards our goal of $100,000. And it looks like, since we have to stay a little bit longer, we might be announcing that. So that's 100% privately funded. Now, can we keep that up? I don't know, but it sure would take the strain off of our budget, when these teams have to be out of the state to be able to practice and compete.
All right, I'm going to go to your crystal ball again, Coach. And everybody's asking this question, Aggie fans. Would the Aggies have put up a better fight? Would you have won the game against Northridge recently had you had the ability to practice at home, get more work for your team? How does Coach Jans feel? That might be a private conversation, but man, it's all up against you guys right now. How do you overcome the disadvantage?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing, in talking with Coach Jans, his mantra is no one cares. No one cares if your players are injured. No one cares if you haven't practiced. You just go out and win the game. And that is really how he believes. And I said, well, some of us do care, Coach. But the reality is this, certainly, arguably, two of our top three players, had broken feet for that game. And we didn't have much preparation time in the preseason and with the stops and starts. So, yes, certainly practice and the ability to gel with your team and have people step into, different roles. When you have a Jabari Rice and a Clayton Henry out, that certainly impacts what you're going to do on the court. So yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I think that's when people have to step up. You use it as a positive, while it doesn't feel good at the time. Yeah, we certainly would have loved to have more practice. I can't say 100% if it would be a different outcome, but I kind of feel like it certainly might have been a different outcome if we could have had practice time. But, we'll just roll with the punches and get as much work done as we can. And hopefully guys will, receive this challenge and step up and say, hey, without these two guys, I've got to fill this void. So hopefully that'll happen sooner than later.
Well, maybe we can take a photograph of that beautiful photograph behind you of a jam-packed Pan American Center and slip that into the huddles of Coach Jans and his Aggies and say, guys, just pretend you're inside this building right now.
Yeah.
Because I love your facility, always have. It's one of the most wild and crazy student bodies in the country. You know it and I know it. That's a unique facility. And the personality of your big place is so much fun. How much would you, this is a rhetorical question of the year, how much would your team love to be in that building with that scene in front of them?
Well, obviously, that's one of the big reasons why we have a tough time getting home games. We have a kind of a ridiculous winning percentage at home, and you're right. When the place is filled up, it is very difficult for an opponent. Heck, Henry, even when the lower bowl is filled up, it just changes. The Pan Am is kind of a big building in comparison to today's, what they're building. And to have a building that seats 12,600 in a town of only 100,000, if you fill that thing up, you've got almost 13% of the entire population of your city in one place. But yeah, it's been great for us. And hopefully, you asked me to go back a little bit. What's my thought, with the Operation Warp Speed and the vaccines coming out? Hopefully, I know New Mexico was one of the early states to receive that. So hopefully that will also factor into decision making, if X amount of the population can get a vaccine, maybe that will accelerate us coming home.
All right. How dangerous is it out there? You get all the medical reports and across the NCAA schools. Help us understand the governor's point of view before we go.
Sure. Look, I can just talk. I don't want to get, as I say, above my pay grade, but certainly with New Mexico, I know the arguments are, limited amount of hospitals. So if there's over an abundance of hospitalizations, we don't have the ability to send patients to other states, Texas, Arizona, they probably have maybe a bigger hospital infrastructure. I think from our age group, our student athletes, you see the statistics. I don't think there's a very big danger zone. Most of our student athletes are asymptomatic, then they recover. And we're very fortunate with that. Now, that's not minimizing, COVID, because they still haven't studied all the long-term effects. They talked about I'm going to say it wrong, myocarditis, the enlarging of the heart. So there's still studies that need to be done. So I think that's why everybody's dealing with tremendous precaution. And that's why us and the NCAA, gee whiz, Henry, we're testing 3 times a week. I think the student athletes know what is at stake, so they're being as careful as possible. But also, it's a virus. So unless you're in like a true bubble and not interacting with anybody else, so many people throw the term bubble around and it aggravates me because nobody's ever really in a true bubble except the NBA, which is $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
Our kids are as isolated as much as we can, but they're still in a hotel that other people are at. And, it's touching surfaces and things like that. So, that's what makes it difficult because, we've had some positives and we're scratching our heads. Where did they get it from? Did they get it from one of our opponents? Did they get it from a ball that they were shooting around with? That's the problem. You can't really identify exactly where it came from. And I think that's part of the, fear of it. You can't see it, you can't touch it, you don't know where you get it.
All right. The community, your fans right now, what are they saying to you? It's got to be a frustrated fan base right now. They're sports fans every year forever. They've been able to buy a ticket and go into that famous facility and enjoy Division I college basketball.
Yeah.
What's the reaction of your fans right now? Paint the frustration for us.
Well, I will tell you this, our fans certainly receive plenty of enjoyment and it's their entertainment outlet for a lot of them. They also love to see the young people compete in all the different sports. Certainly in our Olympic sports, the older population, a lot of retirees out here, that's a big part of their entertainment. I've really found, Henry, quite frankly, it kind of falls on political lines. You have somebody who says, hey, you guys got to be extra, extra cautious. And then you have some people who say, this is the most ridiculous thing they've ever heard of. So it has fallen on, just like so many things in our daily life, the political spectrum. But I will say this, all of our fans, or the vast majority, and I'm talking 90+% higher, have really appreciated us trying to give our student athletes an opportunity to practice and play. When we sit down with those players as prospective student athletes and their parents, we tell them, look, you're going to have a great academic experience here. You're going to pick your own classes. You're going to matriculate and graduate, and you're going to be a successful alum. The numbers prove that out. You're going to have a great social experience here. It's a campus of, 15,000 people. It's not too small. It's not too big. Las Cruces is a very safe place. But yet there's still things to do as a college kid. So you're going to have a great social experience, and then you're going to have a chance to compete for championships and go to the NCAA. So I think our fans know that is one of the things we've promised those student athletes and their parents. Now, we've promised to do it in a safe manner because they entrust us with their youngsters, their kids. So I've found that our fans, no matter what side of the argument they're on politically, masks, no masks, et cetera, they are appreciative that we're trying to give our student athletes an opportunity to play.
Wow. And you covered a lot there, very tactfully, but very honestly as well. I don't know how you do that. Maybe your future lies in politics, Mario, but you did that brilliantly. I wanted to bring up the passing of one of the greatest athletes ever to play college basketball in the USA, Jimmy Collins. I mean, he led the Aggies to a Final Four appearance back in 1970. We all remember that. And you might have been a little kid then, so maybe you don't remember it as well as Henry T. But what a gentleman, what a leader, tremendous athlete. Your thoughts of his passing, the loss of Jimmy Collins?
Yeah, the first off, the end of 2020, can't come fast enough. Obviously, earlier in the year, we lost Lou, Henson. Now we lose Jimmy. I knew Jimmy because he came back several times. I also, to go to the games, he was very involved. He was always like he had a bright light around him, like an aura. He was always upbeat and happy and positive, and you could see him being the captain of the team. And I also knew him, when I was the athletic director at Southern Illinois. He was a longtime assistant with Lou at Illinois, but also the head coach, and he won over 200 games and took UIC, the University of Illinois at Chicago, to 3 NCAA tournaments. So he's a great head coach in his own right, as well as a player. As we put together our video tributes, there's a great shot of him doing like 2 ball fakes, the UCLA defender going a totally different direction and him hitting a fadeaway jump shot. And John Wooden just leans back in his chair and puts his hand on his head like, how the heck did he do that? So, 3-time first team All-American, first round NBA pick. You can't say enough about him. So if there's one thing that I take solace in, is the fact that this past year in February, we were able to have a Final Four reunion, and every living member of the team came back. So 9 guys came back, Jimmy included, and the coaching staff. Now, Lou couldn't make it, but Lou recorded a video message, and he was certainly aware the guys came back. And so while it was a devastating blow for our athletic program, our community, and hell, our state, I think people can take comfort in the fact that they were all together one last time and actually saw the Aggies win a game in a last-second 3-pointer by Jabari Rice. So it had to give them a good feeling. After the game, we had the current team on one side and the Hall of Famers on the other signing. And it was an hour from when they started, and the line was still snaking around the floor of the Pan Am. So I think everybody knows how special of a team that is. That is the greatest team, along with the 1960 football team that's ever been at New Mexico State.
Yeah.
Yep. Now you're seeing some of this footage here too.
Yeah. The spirit at New Mexico State are what I see there. And I talked to Chito Reyes, the big Sam Lacey. My goodness.
Yeah, I talked to Cheeto. Oh boy, it must have been maybe 30 days ago. Charlie Chris. So it was nice that they could come back as well, because we got to, got to strengthen our relationships with them, make sure they knew they were always welcome to come back to Las Cruces.
That reunion, I've heard so much about it. It was so well attended, as you articulated there, but it was emotional too for the players, because they were teammates, but they were brothers. They loved each other, and maybe that's one of the reasons they advanced so far in the NCAA tournament. And as I read up on that 4-team experience in Landover, Maryland, if I am not mistaken. The NCAA Final Four then was not what it is today, but still enough teams. You come down to 4 left out of all those teams in the country. How significant was that event and that team for your school, for your community?
Well, I tell you what, it's the, in my mind, the number one moment in Aggie athletics history. You're right, Henry. College Park, Maryland. I think it was also Jacksonville, right, with Artis Gilmore, I believe. And I think it was St. Bonaventure. But there's a picture of Jimmy Collins and I in the office, because the 3 times in the history of Sports Illustrated that we were on the cover, 2 was Charlie Johnson, our great quarterback with the St. Louis Cardinals and the Denver Broncos. Yeah. And then the other one was that year's Final Four, and it had all the best players from the teams. And obviously Jimmy was on the cover from New Mexico State. So I think that shows you only 3 times in our history have we been on the cover. That's one of them. But so many people remember that team, talk about that team. And what was amazing, though, hearing the guys' stories, because you got to remember, there was still a lot of racial inequities in 1970, and just traveling around and staying at hotels, and just how they traveled and what they ate. And you think about getting on an airplane now, maybe not a big deal, but getting on an airplane in 1970 to travel is probably was a little bit different.
Amen. You know, it was significant also, Coach, is that 40 miles south of you, 3 years prior or 4 years prior, was Don Haskins' historical championship team when he put 5 black players, African American players, on the floor at the same time for the first time in our country's history, and they beat Adolph Rupp and Kentucky. And then 4 years later, the Aggies are in the Final Four. So in a 40-mile area there, and then during the middle of the season, the Lobos had a victory over each of you. So, man, we were basketball rich in our state.
Well, yeah, you talk about Don Haskins and Lou Henson and Bob King. You know, that was the kind of golden era of the Rio Grande rivalries. And, you know, I don't know if we'll get back to that time anytime soon, but you're right. There was some phenomenal basketball being played back then. And even when I was a student athlete, boy, you know, when we would play UTEP, I think there was like 8 guys from Chicago, Illinois on the floor, and there was a war going on. So, yeah, this area has always been very rich with basketball. And but those two were the defining moments, I think, for both universities.
Yeah, I think we're going to grow into that again.
Let's
I
hope
really
so.
feel it. Yeah. And then I also feel like, in reiterating our points of early in our conversation, I really believe you're destined for the Mountain West. And New Mexico fans, write a letter to the commissioners. Get on your Zoom account and spread the word. The power of the athletic people in our community. Maybe you together can move the mountains necessary for us to have UTEP and the Aggies in the same conference with the Lobos. Makes a lot of sense to me. You got the Sun Bowl right there. You want to make some improvements to your press box or whatever, and there you are, qualified with the right facilities to be in the league. Man, I hope that happens, Mario. You're a visionary guy. Do you see it?
I tell you what, it would be, I will say this, it would be wonderful if UNM, New Mexico State, and UTEP would all be in the same conference. I mean, right now, when we play each other in football or men's basketball or tiddlywinks, you know, the stakes are unbelievably high. You get your student athletes' best performances. Your fans come out in droves. I mean, if you were playing, you know, for conference standing and seating, I mean, I think it would just go through the roof. So yeah, that would be wonderful if we could ever all be in the same conference. And it's a little odd that we're so close to each other geographically, but yet we're in 3 different conferences. So maybe that'll change in the future.
And other sportscasters, I never hear them talk about it because, God bless them, they don't know the rivalries, the significance of playing the minors playing the Aggies, and what it feels like to be at an athletic contest. You do, I do, we've been there. These new reporters in our community, they have no clue. They can't sell it like I can, like you can. And so it's time to really sell it, I believe.
Well, Henry, it looks like you are going to be the P.T. Barnum of these conferences. So,
amen. Let's talk about who Lou Henson is to your school, to your community, and the passing of sweet Lou. He left his mark, did he not?
well, there's no doubt. I mean, Lou is, you know, iconic in college basketball. He's in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. You know, he's just been nominated to the Naismith Hall of Fame. So knock on wood. It would be wonderful if Coach could get in on the first ballot. Obviously, at the University of Illinois, he's unbelievably revered as well for taking them to a Final Four in the 80s with the Flying Illini. But I think even bigger than that, you can't talk to one person who doesn't talk about Lou's demeanor and how kind of an individual he was. You know, you get a lot of stories about bullies or tough guys or, you know, people who, you know, if you're not maybe a huge booster or donor, they don't have time for you. But Lou talked to everybody. Lou was just an everyman. And, you know, when Lou passed, I kind of said, you know, name me 10 New Mexicans in the history of our state that have as much, you know, gravitas as Lou Henson did. You know, I think he was right up there in the pantheon of New Mexicans who, you know, just by his accomplishments and how he conducted himself. I mean, he is really the Renaissance man, you know, true gentleman and a ferocious competitor as a coach.
Yeah. And I've talked to Chito Reyes regularly, and he's touched even to this day the principles of life that he carries that were taught him by Lou Henson. And Chito talks about the respect for Lou reflected his ability to go to class, to study, his grade point average, his character. And there you see Jimmy Collins. And yeah. Jimmy said the same thing with me. God, the respect level that they had for Coach Henson, indescribable. But you just sit back and listen to these athletes. Man, he literally enhanced their quality of life, their character, and the finances they make today for their families. They all put the name Lou Henson in front of that success story. And there's Lou right there.
Well, Lou, you know, what you saw of Lou wasn't an act. It was true. You know, when I first, great Lou story, when I first moved into town, Lou was one of the first people that I met with. Now, we had spoke on the phone several times because the University of Illinois and Southern Illinois had a tremendous amount of correlations in the sport of baseball, different personnel. So I knew a lot of people that Lou knew, and they kind of gave me a little stamp of approval. And the old baseball coach at Southern Illinois and Illinois, Itchy Jones, was a good friend of Lou, good bridge partner, et cetera. So, and I was good friends with Itch. Well, I moved down here, and, you know, a few months later, Heidi and the girls moved down here, and they were much younger. And I was in the married student housing apartments. And Mary said, Mario, you cannot have those little girls over there. She goes, you're moving into our house. And I said, oh, no, Mary, there's no way we can do that. They had a little casita attached to their house. I said, no. She goes, I go, oh, that casita, we wouldn't want to be that close and bother you. She goes, casita? She goes, no, you're moving into our house. Lou and I are leaving for Illinois for 6 months. So you're moving in. I said, no, Mary, there's no way I can do that. Well, I came home, and Heidi said, hey, Mary called me. We're going over there to make the arrangements. So I didn't have any say in that. Well, Lou, you know, the kids are enrolled in school. Addie at the time was in 2nd grade. And one of the neighbors had a blank rental agreement. And they said, Lou, you have to fill this out so he can enroll the kids in school. Okay, so we're filling it out. And he says, well, how much are you charging him? And Lou stops at the box to put in the amount. And he goes, well, I wasn't going to charge him anything. And the guy says, well, you got to charge him something. He goes, well, I'll charge him $1. And I said, wait, hold on, coach. We haven't even had a chance to negotiate this yet. He looked at me and he goes, Mario, just sign the paper, would you please? So, you know, just a guy that would open up his house to a more or less somebody he doesn't know very well and have his children stay there. I just think speaks volumes to, you know, the kind of person Lou was and Mary is. So yeah, he's going to be sorely missed. Wow.
I had Mary Henson, Mrs. Henson, on the show 2 weeks ago. I thought I had just met a saint.
Yeah.
When it was over with. I've met her before with the Aggies on the road when I was the TV voice for the Aggies under the reign of athletic director Faison and then Lou had come back to sign a $1 contract for the season with the Aggies as well. Unbelievable, man. You know, there are two kinds of givers in this world, as you well know, givers and takers. How big a giver was Lou Henson?
Well, you talk about, Mary being a saint. Henry, as you can imagine, I'll tell you one more quick story. Lou's house was littered with these fantastic memorabilia things, Wall Street Journal articles on him, all the balls, 100 to the 700 plus win balls, all this cool stuff. Well, we had been so good with the small children not messing with anything, and Heidi had to run out one day with the older child, which left me with the 2-year-old at the time. So I'm thinking, I got time to just jump in a shower real quick. So I take a quick shower, come out, and the 2-year-old's got something in her hand. And I look, and it's Lou's skull from his original, bobblehead from way back when. And I panicked. And then I looked over there, and Mary's Citizen of the Year award was smashed on the ground. And I was like, oh God, we're going to get evicted. Heidi came home and said, I'm not calling Mary. This is your fault. So I was getting yelled at. So I said, Mary, these 2 things were broken. She goes, oh, I don't care at all about those things. Just give that little girl a big kiss and send me some pictures. So, Mary is phenomenal to this day. And it's great that we still get to speak via email and in person often.
Amazing. Let's just talk about you before our time ends today. Who inspired you to be who Mario Moccia is? Your character, number one. Who helped you build that? Who taught you how to take the straight and narrow? Your athletic influence, how you became an athlete. Who are you way back when leading up to this day?
Yeah. All right, Henry, you're putting me on the Oprah Winfrey sofa here, I see. But I'd say it starts out with my folks. Thank God my parents are still alive at 90 and 91. But Dad was born in October of 1929 in New York, right during the crash. So both my parents grew up with meager beginnings, and my dad was a really good athlete. And I've heard this story 1,000 times. He came home one day, and he said, Dad, there's a scout that wants to sign me to a professional contract with the Brooklyn Dodgers in Class D ball. They had Class D back then. And his dad, who finished the 5th grade, said, absolutely not. You're going to be the first person to go to college. So he did, and he became a doctor. And I think that unfulfilled baseball dream was passed on to me. And being a physician, he was an anesthesiologist. There's not a whole lot of room for error in that profession. So I had a perfectionist who really wanted to be a baseball player. So on the times I was 3 for 4, on the way home, we weren't talking about the 3 hits. We were talking about the out. So, that started it. And then, after my baseball life ended, I started at UNM, got my master's degree. And a lot of people don't realize this. Other ADs that came through that program, Larry Tice, the athletic director at Texas State, Lee Reed, the athletic director at Georgetown University, Darren Dunn, the athletic director at Northern Colorado, and several more. But Rudy Davalos was the AD at the time. But I really worked kind of directly for a guy named Mike Alden. And, Mike had taken me to, I did 4.5 years with the Lobos as an intern and then in marketing. But when I went to Texas State with Mike and then Missouri, at the end of Mike's career, there's 130 Division I FBS ADs out there. And
Wow.
Mike has, from Alden's tree, he's got 7% of that. So it's Ross Bjork at Texas A&M and Laird Veach at Memphis, myself at New Mexico State, Doug Gillen, who was at UNM at a time. He's at Appalachian State, Brian Maggard at Louisiana Lafayette,
Gee.
Mark Allnut at Buffalo. So we've got ADs all over the place. Whit Babcock at, I think I said Virginia Tech. So Mike really gave all of us what I would call a good set of fundamentals. And I think if you have those, there's some situations that maybe you don't handle perfectly, but if you have good fundamentals, you can always, I think, fall back on those. And that plus a big part of our education at New Mexico was group sales. I still think that no matter what discipline you're in, you remember Rudy, he would never put a dang game on in the pit unless not just every seat was sold, but every sold out, right? Because it used to be 18018, if my memory serves correctly. So group sales, that was a way to make yourself known at UNM, and I kind of figured out right away, if you made 10 calls, you'd make one sale. If you made 100, you'd sell 10. And if you made 1,000, you'd sell 100. So that was group sales at New Mexico in football, and basketball was a way to kind of move up the chain, get noticed. And so I'll give Mike Alden the credit for that.
When I think of the pit back in those days, I think of that figure, the attendance figure. And I ask myself, and I pound my head, and I say, how do you, just out of the clear blue sky one day, say, let's remove 4,000 seats and go from 18,000 to 14,000? Who thinks of thoughts like that? And I'm bewildered. I'm like blindsided. Is that a rare administrative move to take 4,000 seats out of the famous University Arena, the pit, Bob King Court?
Yeah, Henry, I wasn't around when the renovation took place. I will say this from the athletic director's side, there are so many more games being televised that it is more and more difficult to fill up an arena. I look at that here, we went from not really televising anything to now every game at home is on the WAC digital, which you can get for free in your living room. So I certainly understand it. I also drive around Albuquerque and my jaw hits the ground because I can't believe how big it has become, with potential fans and things like that. So, those are decisions that each university has to make, and depending on what time when they make it. So I could only speak for us. The one thing we've tried to do here with a bigger arena, 12,600, is that, Henry, I made the decision that we weren't going to sell any tickets in the upper level until the lower level was significantly sold. And of course, you have to fiddle around with the pricing a little bit because people aren't going to pay, exorbitant amount of prices all in the lower level. But this is what I found out. We did some research. The year before we did this, the Pan American Center was at 38% capacity. But if you just moved all those people down into the lower level became would have been at 78% capacity. And I'm telling you, when that lower bowl is filled, it changes the emotion of the game. And Chris Jans has mentioned it a lot. So we make an effort, so every game in section 119, that's 172 seats, we keep that open and we sell those tickets for $5, except for UNM, UTEP, and Grand Canyon where they're 10. But that means that any fan can still come in and for $5 and sit in a lower level seat. So we've tried to do some things to really jam pack that lower level so it can have a positive outcome on the game.
Wow. It's been a pleasure talking to you. What an education you've given us today. As we close today, what's going to happen in the very near future? You educate yourself on what's going on every day. You see the big picture. Nobody has a better conceptual skill of Aggie world than you. What do we need to see? What do we need to hope for? What's going to happen?
Well, I would say this, Henry, I really think with the advent of the vaccine, that when we get to August and September of 2021, I would think that all the fall sports, football, volleyball, soccer, will be quote unquote back to normal. That's my hope, but that's my desire. I do think that a big portion of the population will receive a vaccine. And, at one point in time in the near future, we'll be talking about how we remember that we used to wear masks outside like they did in the, 1916 and 1917. But I just hope people will hang on. We know that we've got some challenges in the state. We're trying to work through that, but you can get kind of beat up and downtrodden with all the news and we can't do this and we can't do that. And I think the reality that doesn't serve anybody well. It doesn't serve the fan base well. It doesn't serve the student athletes well. So it's not being Pollyanna-ish, but I just remind everybody, keep a good thought, power of positive thinking. I told Chris Jansis after all the injuries, Winston Churchill, what he said, man, when you're going through hell, keep going. All right. It doesn't last forever. So I think we're on the cusp of getting on the other side of this, and hope every Aggie fan will wake up and kind of keep that fighting spirit and a good thought.
Finally, give us the records right now, the men Aggies and the women Aggies.
Well, right now the men are sitting at 2-1. We've played those two NAIA teams and Cal Northridge, which was a loss. The women, let me see here, that was 1-2 with UTEP. That was 0-2. Then California, we split. That was 2-4. Then we won at Denver. 3-5. No, we won another game. 4-5, I believe our women are right now. And what's great, we went up to Denver, and now I'm going to check this with our website, Henry, to make sure I'm right, but I think we're 4-5. We went up to Denver and beat them. They had just beaten Colorado of the Pac-12 on their floor a couple nights before. So, I know our women, we, I don't want to say gave away. That's not a good term. We had an opportunity to beat UTEP. We had a substantial lead late in both games, but Henry, when you only have like 3 or 4 practices, it isn't conducive, but I really thought we could have got off on the really right foot. Yeah. But nevertheless, I think once we start playing again, we'll hit our stride. I think we've got a really good shot at, repeating in some WAC championships this year.
Is there a restaurant with a patio open for lunch up there?
There is.
I'm going to take you to lunch for being so gracious to us today. I'll sneak up there and you and I will go to lunch. And then we're going to sneak over to a basketball court at a junior high court. And I just got some brand new sneakers, a brand new ball. We'll use a Las Cruces schoolyard, and you and I are going to play one-on-one, Mario. How about it?
Well, Henry, you got a great chance because you've never seen me shoot. I think I challenged Johnny McCants after practice to a free throw shooting contest, and I'm not sure I made one. So you got a good chance.
That's perfect. There's only one problem, Mario, when we play.
And that is?
What hand do I tie behind my back?
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go around and practice, Henry. Just you threw down the gauntlet.
What a pleasure talking to you today, buddy. God bless you. And thank God we have you as the athletic director at New Mexico State. We're grateful. Thank you.
Well, were you too kind, and thanks for doing everything you do, Henry. It's a long ride, and I'm glad you're still going full speed on the horse.
Amen. I'll be up there to do an Aggie game someday soon, so I'll be knocking on your door.
Sounds good, Henry.
Thank you, buddy. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year. Mario Moccia, what a gentleman. What a leader. Capable. Ooh, he's on his way to the mountaintop. And this show reached the mountaintop today, having Mario with us. Thank you to you, all of you fans out there. We'll give a glance to our sponsors right now, and Amistoy Drywall, and of course, Rax Lumber Company, and the Cantina, and all those great people who support this show. And believe me, and yeah, Indigo Mortgage, man, these people believe in us. They love what we do here. And I love having you aboard every day. our numbers continue to rise. And thank you to all those great people, and Everguard Roofing, the Hydro Bar, and Tim Baca, the canteen with Kevin out there. Wow, this is a team. Thank you to Jimmy Tran, our producer, Alden, our producer back at ProView Network, and thank you to Comcast 26 and GovTV. It's been a great show today. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Henry C. saying, see you next Monday right here. Big guests coming your way. Thank you. Take care.